Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas.
Thanks very much for watching.
Hello, Jim Howard here in Fort Worth, Texas. Today's date, it is April 8th of 2022. No major update, just wanted to change my monitors. You see up here, number 1 monitor, that's this one by the way, and it's of course an LG, and it's set at 3840 by 2160. Now the number 2 monitor, I just replaced it, you know, like 3 a.m. in the morning or whatever, about 6 hours ago or something. And it is, if I remember, I've got them all written down. I own about 5 or more, not counting the ones that my son I gave, and my ex-wife, you know, basically gave her the a monitor, not counting those. I think I'm using the LG, you know, over here, 29UM68-P, and it's set to 2560 by 1080. So in order to get the monitors, I had to lower this one, you know, down so that they match up. The number 2 monitor, the one that's set to 2560 by 1080, you know, it's here, and you're not seeing that screen, but I have OBS on it, and but anyway, the everything on this monitor is pretty nice for the settings. Maybe we should pop over to, well, let's see if I've showed you everything here. You know, apparently it's working with HDR. I wonder if I should change that scale, but it's working. It's working. Working good, better. I guess I'll leave it alone. What did I just say? Oh, the monitor. Okay. I want to go to Amazon. Here we are. Want to go, by the way, we were without power, I think last night or the night before. And I don't know, I finally went to bed. It was like 4 hours or whatever, maybe longer, because I think I was standing around for 4 hours with nothing to do. I do think I'm going to get one of these, by the way. I mean, I'll start with one. Now, I want to go to orders and go to 29UM68. Okay, not showing that. What did I forget? 68. Did I forget the -P? Surely not. Okay, let's go to LG monitors and see what shows up. Okay, here we go. Wait a minute. 27 68. Okay. LG 29 68. And it shows here as a P. So let's see if it pops up now. No. Let me go back to my thing and click on the LG. Okay, now 29 68. Okay, apparently it's not, you know, available online. You know, they probably have a new model. But so we can forget about that. Let's pull up this. Well, maybe it's not going to let me because I'm using the camera. No, okay, it won't let me. Well, I guess that's it. Seems like I had more than that. I've still got my Chrome box in the background. I'm enjoying actually this, having these two monitors. I mean, I've had monitors like this before, and I've had them both the same. But right now, I'm enjoying the, and I think this 25 or the 29 68. I believe it's. I believe it's doing HDR10, and wait, it's working well this time. I've hooked up these monitors, you know, before, and I'm going to sneeze. I sneezed, I'm dizzy now. Let's see, did I mention that I got or maybe I mentioned it another, went to the grocery store. I think I mentioned that in a video. So I got my finally booster shot. You know, I had the 2 primary shots that you needed to get for the virus, and then I've just now got my first booster shot. Albertsons, I think, is the name of the grocery store, and I logged in and you know, entered the information, and they had an appointment about 30 minutes from the time that I was entering this information, and Hillary, my daughter, came over, and we went up there, and they said in the thing, you can just go up there and see if they'll work you in. We went in, and I mean, so she didn't have an appointment, you know, and I went in and gave them what I had printed out on my printer that they wanted, and they took care of Hillary also, so she's got her first booster shot. Now she gets out all the time. She wears a mask, so I mean, if she's out, she wears a mask. One reason is because of us, you know, because we've got a lot of medical problems, and she gets, you know, so she gets out. Especially she's wearing the mask. She doesn't want the virus, but she especially wears a mask so she doesn't transmit something to, you know, something to us. my son's still in the hospital, and the only way that we can call him is to give them the code that he gives to us. He, however, has to ask them for the code and then tell us the code. And at least, I don't know how often he maybe is doing it. I've been on the phone with him at least 2 times, where he's called us. And he hasn't been with me, but now he called here and got his mother, and she asked him, did they give you the code yet? And he became very angry, like, to hell with them. I've asked him repeatedly for the code, and he can't understand. So I worked 30 years hospital security, and I never ran into that because security had a key to to get into the unit. But I'm not sure. Maybe this is part of a test to see how he functions. But there's a family involved, Maybe there is part of, if they give him some information in a confusing way, and he can understand it. Well, then they think, okay, it's okay for him to allow people to call, his family to call. I don't know. I've never heard of that. But because of the privacy concerns, hospitals have, for situations like this, family cannot call up and say. Now maybe you'll get somebody who's willing to, violate the, you can't call up and say, do you have so-and-so there? They won't give, I'm sorry, they won't give you the information. And then if you want to call up your son or whatever, you have to have a code. The last time my son was in the hospital, we went over, and the person you want to has to give you, approve a code for you to have, so you can then, see them and talk to them. And this whole thing is I understand, but it's just, I worked at a hospital, we had a psych unit, and the hospital was going to totally repave a parking lot. And we had like 2 months notice. And so we started checking. I mean, we found that, we checked all the vehicle, one vehicle, just who does this belong to? And we ran the tags, and it came back, we didn't get any, well, we got some results, but it was outdated and everything else on the thing. I went to the psych unit, and like we had a name, but we went to the psych unit, and I said, do we have a patient here? No. You don't have a patient here by that? No. I said, well, we're going to be paving the parking lot, and any car left, we've got loads of time, and we're starting early on this, but if anybody's car that's in the parking lot on such and such a date is going to be towed. Yeah, and I said, you're sure we don't have any? No, we don't have anybody by that name. So then as it got closer and closer, we did some paging over the public address system, Well, the owner of such and such a, vehicle, contact us. Nobody contacted us. And then down at the last day or whatever, I called the psych. I think I went over to the psych unit. Went in. No, we don't have anybody by that name. So we towed the vehicle. And then about a few days later, or a week later, the psych unit calls us and says, Mr. So-and-so, the person I've been asking for, is being dismissed and his car is gone. Now, I've run into a whole bunch of situations like that. We've had one lady, I forget the exact details. One lady told her son or stepson that she wanted her husband, his father or stepfather, killed, and she would pay him. And so he got a buddy of his, and they killed him. So they were arrested, and of course they immediately told, what. And the police arrested her. But she, which is not unusual, got herself admitted to our psych unit. And there was, I'm not sure if that's the hospital that was affiliated with the hospital I was working at, but there was, I think it was, a guy robbed, I think it was a bank. It was something with a large amount of money. And he robbed the place, and he drove directly to the psych unit and got admitted. And the psych unit, I think for a long time, they didn't give the police any, I think the police found the car. Well, I don't remember, might not have been our house because I don't remember being involved, But the police found the car, and the psych unit did not want to tell them any, information. I forget how that all went. But all of this stuff is, I know you need to protect patients, information. It's a law. And it's a serious law. I don't think people understand how I think one time I mentioned the 3 situations that I knew about, and I mentioned the thing that I just about got. It would have been, I wouldn't have cared, but except I would have hated for the hospital to, some of the guys that I worked with that would have been able, but they could have been then gone, ha ha ha, Jim Howard got fired for, But so I could have been fired, but I wasn't. In fact, they didn't even talk to me about it. But the other 3 situations, I think I'm not going to go through them again. But you would, if you're not involved in hospitals or healthcare or something like that, you would think, why did this person get into, trouble? And because they're really, really strict, and the government can, of course, they would want to be thinking very carefully. They can close down a hospital, and actually they wouldn't have to say you're closed down. All they would have to, all the government would have to do with any hospital would, because of violations, say your hospital, and they could even do it for like your hospital for 30 days will not be paid for Medicare or Medicaid expenses. That would put just about every hospital that they did that to, and I'm talking about 30 days, that would be the hospital would have to close. Maybe the hospital could go to their bank and say, we need an emergency loan of X amount of money, and that might work. But also what the government does is, and I've seen that happen, it's happened to a couple hospitals I worked at, a violation of some rule, and the federal government says you have to send all of your employees through a day's training on this subject, how you handle something like this, and the proper way, and how do you report it. Here's the list of agencies that you are to report it, required to report it, and then they could do other things. I worked at the main hospital when they were just the main hospital, for Research Medical Center. And then of course they formed a corporation, Health Midwest, and then they started buying other hospitals or whatever. And the first thing is they built in the small town that I lived in a small hospital. And in order to be allowed to do that, because the federal government has rules about hospitals have to be approved, whether they can build, whether they can add beds, all these things, everything has to be approved in order to hold down costs. Because if every hospital, or someplace opened up and said we have 20 beds, 50 beds, 100 beds, or whatever, you'd have too many beds available for the patients. And then other hospitals, they need X amount of capacity filled. So anyway, this hospital I worked at, they first built that little hospital out in the town, and I had to file a grievance in order. I'd worked there 5 years, and when they announced they were building a hospital out there in Belton, Missouri, they announced, that to the security department, the director of security then, at that time, and he had been for a long time director of security there, and he was unbelievable. But he lasted years, and before he was there, he was director of security for a long time at what was General Hospital, the city's hospital, He was director there, and I think I told you where I was working at another hospital, and there was a guy whose wife came in all the time, an elderly man. He was there, and I'd see him often, and I'd go by and say, "Oh, is your wife, here again?" Which I guess could have been a violation, anyway. But then one day he was standing in the emergency room, and I went by and I said, "Oh, it looks like your wife must be here again. I hope everything's okay." And he says, "Oh, that's a regular thing." And he says, "I want to tell you something." He says, "You guys have really excellent security here. It's excellent." And I said, "Well, thank you, And he says, "I'm a police officer for Kansas City, Missouri Police Department, and I work over at General Hospital." No, wait a minute. I think it was General Hospital at that time. Can't remember. He says, "Can I ask you something?" I said, "Sure." He says, "We got a psych unit over there." No, not a psych unit. Well, it was for prisoners to go there. Because there was police officers that worked there, a couple at a time. And he said, the other day or last week or something like that, he said, 2 prisoners jumped me. And I was having a hard time, And he said, security was there, And I said, "Well, they jumped in to help you." "No." I said, "You mean they just stood there?" And he says, "Yes." He says, I went to the director of security, and no, he says, "I asked these guys, why didn't you jump in and help me?" And they said that the director of security forbid them, said that if they did, they would be fired. I would have jumped in anyway, you know. And you know, he said, and what's strange, anyway, he says, I went to the director of security, who was a retired Kansas City, Missouri police officer, a high-ranking Kansas City, Missouri police officer, and he said, yes, that's correct. I'll fire them. They're not to jump in and help you. And I said, I can't believe it. Then I eventually ended up working for that director of security, and he was unbelievable. I can't believe that he survived working as director of security. You know, the hospital that he was working at, General Hospital, became Truman Medical Center, the hospital, you know, for everybody. Actually, a trauma center. If the president comes to town, that's the hospital that he'll be, you know, that will be on the CIA or the Secret Services list to be rooted to and that type of stuff. And then he went on to, and he was unbelievable. The things he did, he wouldn't even tell us if a report was made, you know, like I come on duty or whatever, and, you know, it would be more than me, but come on duty. Things may have happened, and he would take the reports. When the security officer made a report, he would be locked up. We wouldn't even have access to it. We'd have no way of knowing. All kinds of stuff like that. Could not believe that this guy survived that long. But anyway, I was telling you that they were going to build this hospital out in Belton. They got an agreement to, you know, the hospital could transfer 50 beds out there. They only used, you know, they had permission for them, and they were there, but they could use like 25 of them. They didn't have enough patients for the rest. Well, I'll tell you the thing. A real nice young ER clerk. A patient came in and went first to the ER desk, or where the doctors and the nurses were, and, you know, told what her problem was. You know, it was something minor. And I think I'm going to have to get a Kleenex here or something. She told what her problem was. I forget what it was. It was something minor. And sat down, you know, and the clerk started entering the information, and the lady said, I forget the insurance company, it doesn't matter. Why would I remember it? But she said, I have such and such insurance. Here's my card. Does the hospital take this insurance? And the ER clerk said, no, you know, they'll be happy to see you. They'll see you, you know, regardless. But she says, I have the same situation. She says, I have the same insurance company you do, and such and such hospital nearby, you know, that's they take it. And the lady said, oh, thank you very much. I'll just go on out there, make it much simpler, and, you know, no unexpected bills or something like that to deal with. And so the lady left. Now, what happened was that our corporation was one of the hospitals that they bought was that hospital, because they ended up buying just about every hospital in Kansas City. And hang on a second. I'm going to put this down so you don't see my bare butt. I'll be right back when I get some toilet paper. I never thought I'd use that camera shield. Actually, I'm using the Avery Media, really nice USB webcam. I've got a whole bunch of webcams, you know. I got the Brio, USB Brio, which is a nice one too. Anyway, back to my story. So, it just so happens that the hospital that I went to work, okay, so they built the hospital out there. So that the one I was working at, that I had to file a grievance in order to get there. They had bought this corporation, from Research Medical Center, which had been around before World War I. It used to be the German hospital, but in 1917 or whatever, they decided to change the name. So the hospital had bought this other hospital where this lady came in and said, and the clerk said, no, well, no, but so I have the same card and such and such. She said, oh, thank you. So she went to our hospital that was, part of the corporation, and she checked in, and I guess she was saying, oh, I went to, Research Belton Hospital, and they said, that you take this insurance. Yes, we do. Okay. And then that hospital, the one that the corporation bought, reported us to the federal government, the hospital, Research Belton Hospital. And the federal government came in and said, you violated, such and such rules, and we're not going to shut you down this time, but you have to train all of your employees a full day just on this one thing about, transferring people, sending all that kind of stuff. So, now by the way, all the hospitals did not want to be taken over by, for-pay hospitals, and they were telling all the employees at different hospitals and things, this is, well, we can't give you the pay raise, or we're cutting this or that, because we got to keep these for-profit, corporations, from taking over. So this is for your good, So anyway, the hospital I was working at then, Research Medical Center, they had a psych unit on the top floor. And then they announced that they made a deal with this psych hospital, and it was going to be on our property, back in the back. Security would have, less to do with it than going up on the top floor of our hospital, but we'd still respond under certain circumstances or whatever. And so the hospital was built. Research Medical Center and whatever I forget what they even called that hospital. And then I noticed that, I think maybe on their sign, the for-profit company that they were keeping it because it was a for-profit, that was a shared deal. As I told the security officer said, oh, well, the for-profit hospitals, they're never, they're never going to get, and I said, no. I said, before long, just about all the hospitals here will be, the for-profit one. Well, no, Research Medical Center. I said, half of the medical building, that psych one that just built on our property, that's the first step. And then sure enough, they helped, after I, oh, anyway, well, I don't want to go into that. I've been in that, I think, before. Anyway, there was 25 security officers that worked at Research Medical Center. When Research Medical Center, when I hired in there, I thought, this is a mistake because of the director of security and other things, other signs. I didn't even fill out a report. I didn't fill out a request to be hired by them or interviewed by them. But the director of security kept everything confidential to cover his ass and to make us vulnerable, you know, I mean, not telling us things like, you know, it's just unbelievable. Totally. And anyway, he, you know, told the security officers really early, all of us, okay, they're building a research Belton hospital out there, and if any of you guys want to go, put your name on the list, you know, which was kind of strange, except I found out from a supervisor underneath him, Jim, he's decided you'll never go, he'll never let you go out there. You're not going to be allowed to go out there. And I said, okay. I said, I'm not going to be upset. I'm not going to argue or with anything. I'm just going to wait. And if I have seniority, of course, hospitals don't even believe in seniority, you know, because that's like a union thing. And I said, then I'll deal with him. And so anyway, about 6 guys or 7 guys, you know, signed up for it. And of course, I signed up for it. So that was, I thought there would be security like around the clock, but there wasn't going to be. There was going to be security at night. So there was going to be like total of 2 security officers working out there, and that was it. And in the past, I had, when I was doing extra, as I was doing contract security, I was working hospital security for 30 years, and for many years, I also worked contract security. You know, for Burns, Pinkerton, Wells Fargo, and on, you know. And a couple of the places that I worked for that contract place, they didn't have security around the clock, and that was always, it was a disaster. And back then I said, if they don't have 24-hour security, I'm not working, you know. Anyway, I put my name on the list, and about 6 guys, but then they were good security officers and friends of mine too. One of them lived not in Belton, but in Raymore, right next to it. And who else? Anyway, Max, he put in. Anyway, Max, a good friend of mine, and a good excellent security officer. He put in for it. And of course, he said to me, as the time went by, you know, as it getting closer and the construction is being, you know, getting close, he said, you know, well, I'm only going out there if they have, you know, security around the clock. I'm not sure if he mentioned, you know, like 2 security. I think he might have been one of the guys that said, well, they'll have to have, you know, I said, they're not going to have 2 security officers on duty at a time. It's a small hospital. And he said something about, you know, and I said, in fact, I said there won't be, no, I thought there would be a security officer around the clock, like 1 security officer. And then the other really nice guy, and he was a supervisor in, you know, in security, really nice. The only guy that I saw that stood up even a little bit to the director of security. Of course, the only person there that I ever saw stand up to the director of security was me. 25 security officers terrified of the man. I mean, he couldn't shoot you. I mean, the worst he could do is fire you. But anyway, but a real nice security officer. And he said, well, I'm only going out there, you know, if they have a supervisory position open. I said, there won't be any security, you know, supervisory position. And of course, there wasn't. By the time the building was done, every one of the security officers who was working there who wanted to go out there, except for me, all of them withdrew their names. No, I don't want to go there. I don't want to work where I'm the only security officer. And I want to work, I'm a supervisor, I only want to work there if I can be it. And all that, so all of them, and I was the only one left that was still on the list. And the director of security had still been, not to me, you know. It's funny, all those people were 25 security officers, armed, and all of them shaking in their boots, and except for me. So anyway, the thing, he actually had sent out a couple of security officers. Max, the guy I told you about, I forget who the other out there, and they both had more seniority, not hospitals. I mean, they had seniority at Research Medical Center. I had more experience, than because I worked at other hospitals before that. And so anyway, the director of security, we were having one of our departmental meetings every 2 or 3 months. And so all 25 security officers had to come in, And they all go in, and I'm in there, of course, and then he steps in, which we'd never seen him do before, and called somebody out, called me out. We went outside the door, and he says, well, I just wanted to explain to you, we're sending out so-and-so and so-and-so out there, and they're working. I said, I understand. I said, but my position is that I expect to go out there unless one of these people has more seniority with you, with this hospital. If somebody has more, then fine, I have no problem with that. But there's going to be a problem if you send somebody out there who, doesn't have more seniority than I do. And he said, oh yes, I understand, okay, everything. So anyway, then I went back in, and then we had our meeting. The security officers, 25 security officers, I think were shaking in their boots because he'd never, I guess, called somebody out of there to talk to them about something out, whatever. And they all, they wanted to know what was going. What did he talk to you? Am I in trouble, or this? And I said no. I told them, hey, here's what he said, and here's what I said. Oh, okay, So then they hired in 2 security officers, and one of them said, well, they hired me in to work at Research Belton Hospital, and of course I knew anyway what was going to, and so then a day or two later, by that time the director of security had decided after all these years that he didn't want to be director of security anymore. He wanted to retire. I wonder why. I think he was afraid of somebody. And but he instructed the lieutenant, who was incompetent, backstabbing, whatever. I don't know why. So anyway, we had the shift change. So we had the shift that was going off duty and the shift that was coming in duty, and I was in that shift coming in duty, and we were in the office changing the radios, getting the keys, and doing what we needed to do. And then the supervisor yelled, oh, Jim, by the way, you're not going to be going to, Research Belton Hospital. We're sending so-and-so and so-and-so. And I said, no, you're not. He says, yes, I am. And I said, Charlie, you're an incompetent. You would not make a pimple on a security officer's ass. Do you think you could accomplish one simple task? This is a simple, easy thing for you to do. You work the day shift. Could you get me a grievance form? I need a grievance. Just leave it here so when I come in at midnight, because they're not open or whatever, I would have a grievance form. Can you do that one simple task? Oh, yeah. I came in that night. I got the grievance form. I filled out the grievance form. And then, because now the director of security, the guy who was retiring and but he was popping in. I actually think he was afraid to face me man to man. He was popping in, and of course he was telling, Charlie, make sure Jim doesn't go, So I get called in, and Charlie says, with my supervisor, I was working midnight shift with my supervisor. And he says, well, Jim, I wanted to talk to you about your grievance here and tell you why we're not sending you there. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested. Why are you not sending me there? Well, we didn't allocate enough money you're at the top of the pay scale, and we didn't allocate enough money. If we sent you there, we wouldn't be able to send have another security officer out there. And I said, well, Charlie, that's a simple problem to take care of. You just tell management or whatever that you need to. Oh no! First he said, they're not sending any experienced people out there from the hospital. And I said, well, Charlie, that's wrong. Nurse so and so is going out there, and nurse so and so is going out there, and other people from other departments that are working here and now, they're going out there. So that's. He said, well, the reason is we're not sending is because you make too much money, and then he went that thing. It was amazing that the guy could not be so ashamed to do. And I said, okay, well, you just need to allocate more money so you can have the 2 officers out there that you want. And then he says, well, the reason you're not going out there is because you got a bad merit review. And I said, well, Charlie, I have never received a bad merit review in my life. Not at St. Joseph Hospital, not at Trinity Hospital. Never got a bad merit review. And he said, well, so that's the reason. This is the reason that my supervisor was there, I guess. And he was terrified before. This whole thing, like, in the very beginning, he was, and like when this thing came up, it was like, don't, because he was afraid he was going to be fired, or, so anyway, well, you haven't got it yet. It's in my drawer here. He said, so it's in the drawer here. And I said, oh, Charlie, thank you so much. You're making this so easy for me. I just love this. I said, I'll need another grievance form because I'm writing you up on the thing, on the grievance form. I'm writing you up. And then he said, well, Jim, how long have we known each other? And I said, I don't know and I don't care. And I said, I need the grievance form. And he said, clean out your locker and report that you're assigned a research bed to the hospital. Yeah. Ten years later, of course, I'd been working at Research Belton Hospital. 10 years later, I got a little stupid, I guess. I didn't want to be employee of the quarter. I didn't want to, But anyway, I was employee of the quarter. So the director of security came out with Charlie, his assistant, to enjoy the cake and whatever. And then, of course, the director of security, a nice guy, and a big improvement over the other director of security. And he did he made the changes, no more hiding stuff, all this kind of, he unfortunately, he thought he was smart, and he was smart. But these people fall into this thing of, they don't listen to people that they don't think are smart or something like that. But he made those kind of mistakes, but he was still an excellent security. Anyway, he came out. And Charlie came out. And they were sitting there. They both lived in Lee Summit. And they came out. And they were sitting there talking. We were all at the table, Now, the director of security, made a little speech to the people there. I wanted to go and hide. He said, Jim, he sends reports out. He lets me know everything that's going on out here. He went on, and I thought, God, that's not how you deal with, employees. I mean, you don't tell them that security is spying on them or security is reporting them or anything like that, because they're already paranoid, usually. And I just thought, oh, God. I thought I didn't want to be, employee of the quarter. And this is, to myself, this is one of the reasons, So anyway, I couldn't very well say, by the way, the director of security here, good, but I couldn't say, he's been a police sergeant with the Lee Summit Police Department for a few years, and he's gone directly to being director of security, and he doesn't, I couldn't do that, I was just fucked, And so I sit down, and then the director of security and Charlie are sitting there. They're talking about how bad traffic is driving into work from Lee Summit. And then I think I became retarded or something. And I said, oh, that's why I love working out here. I can see the hospital from where I live. It's just great not having to worry about driving through traffic and whatever. And then they went on talking about, oh yeah, such a traffic, and I think I said two or three times I said, that's another reason why it's so great being close to, whatever. And then they left. And then about a week or so later, I got a notice that I was being transferred to the main hospital. And I won't go into all the details, but I did a grievance to keep from being transferred to the main hospital, and lost. And I knew I had lost. I knew I would, you had to go through the steps. And as I went through the steps, I said, I know this isn't going to do any good, but we need to go through the, the grievance procedure steps. I said, I know it's already been decided, and I said, I'm like a test case, because now we owned all these hospitals, And I said, I know what you're going to be doing, and that's going to be, you're going to be putting out a thing, saying that all employees of Health Midwest, all these hospitals, that you could transfer them to another hospital if you needed them at another hospital. And I said, that isn't going to work. I said, but I understand that that's what you're going to be doing. And then I went to the next level, and the same thing. I said, I know what you're up to, and not going to work. Just going to create, Went to the next step, and, Jim, you'll be transferred, One of the things they said, well, Jim, you're going to be transferred to the, main hospital for a little bit, undefined amount of time, so you can use, because they improved their computer system, So, and all we used the computer for security was entering the reports and pulling up information on employees or something like that, and cars, tickets, and that kind of stuff. That's all we that's all we did. Now, other people, that used in the business office and places like that, they had to know more, entering lab results and doing all kinds of stuff. And like the business office people had a lot to do, and they were being transferred down there for like 3 days or something like that. I think one of them that was kind of in charge of the business office, she was transferred down there for 5 days to learn how to use a computer, but I was transferred down there permanently, And so anyway, when I went down to the main hospital to work security, one of the things, the day shift or whatever, we owned some, like a CAT scan place that was a way, we would run, and then there was a certain lab, a lab tech or something had to go to, I forget which place, one of the places, it wasn't exactly a hospital. We'd have to drive him down or her down. So right away, I'm driving this lab tech down, and the lab tech says, well, the hospital, I said, he said, hospital employees, the lab employees, we're all upset. We've been told that we're going to have to, we can be sent to one of these other facilities. And I said, yeah. I said, I know about that and everything. And he says, yeah, we're going to do a grievance. And I said, well, you're going to lose the grievance. And he said, well, why? And I said, because I already did a grievance about being transferred from one hospital to another hospital. And I was like, they're going to tell you that this has already been to the through the grievance procedure, and it's been decided. And he said, they already told us that. They told us that. I said, I'm the person. So, eventually, of course, I made it back to research at Belton Hospital, but well, okay, it looks like my videos are usually running now about 1 hour. I've had some short ones, and I intended for this one to be short. I have never in my entire life have used any illegal substance. I've taken illegal, stuff off. I arrested some, was it 3 guys who, on a weekend when the surgery was closed, but surgery was open because they were doing a surgery, but there wasn't anybody at the desk outside. They were back with the patient. And these 3 guys went in and grabbed some medications and took off running down the street, and I caught them, and they were stupid. They were about a block away, and with the radio and with the weapon that I had and all that kind of, I wouldn't have been able to catch them, but I hollered, "Hey, you guys, can I talk to you a minute?" No. I said, "I just want to," and of course they stop, and I keep walking. "Well, I just want to talk to you about something." No, we need to go. And I said, "Well, what's the rush? We saw a dead body," and actually a body had been picked up about that time. These guys had gone to surgery and stepped on the electric mat, and the door opened. They went in, they grabbed some stuff, and I arrested them. The other security officer that I worked with, he was a really nice guy, but I liked him, and I worked with him quite a while. And if he had some shortcut, which he did in like report writing or whatever, I did all the reports, and and he did some other stuff, that he knew all the employees. He'd worked there for a long time, all that kind of stuff. So it was a good. Our director of security there wanted to fire him because he was black, and the director of security came up with, oh, and then of course he told me, "Jim, he never writes any reports." And I said, "Yeah, but he's so useful. He knows, all the employees, and he helps out in so many ways." And he said, "Well, let him write some reports." And I said, "Okay," but I never let him. I couldn't stop him, but I continued to write the reports. Then the director of security comes up with, "Well, I'm going to get rid of him by I'm changing the thing. Normally, I think we could qualifying on the range every year. I think he had to shoot 70, I believe it was, and he said." I'm raising it to 75, and he won't be able to, he won't be able to pass. And I said, I think there are maybe a couple other people in the department who you would like to keep that will not be able to qualify at 75. They can make it at 70, but they can't make it at 75. He says, "Oh no, they'll, 2 or 3 couldn't make it. One of them went back and tried again and did barely make it. And I forget, then I think another one finally made it. You had 3 chances, and that was it. You were unemployed. You had to have the private officer's commission, And so there was this one guy, security officer, and he was going to go back again. I think he'd been twice, to shoot. This would be the end, if he didn't make it. And I said, wait, let's see what we can do. And of course he did wait. And I went to the director of security, and I said, I was training officer for the department. I said, "Mr. Ross, so-and-so, and I said, I think he's got, I think he needs glasses. I think that's it. He had some little surgery and it was up in the, face or something. I said, do I have the authority to tell him that he has to go see the employee health nurse and, you know, have her check his vision and stuff? And he says, yeah. So anyway, I told, you know, the officer, you know, you need to go see the employee health nurse before you go shoot. And there was the shift that he was on. The guys there were kind of like, they like to stir shit up, all that kind of. They were telling him, oh, Jim doesn't have the authority to tell you to do this and do that and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, he went and was checked by the employee, and his vision was terrible. So he went and got some glasses, and then he went and shot, and he qualified. And then he supposedly was saying, but maybe the other guys that just, you know, didn't like me because I did my job and I expected them to do their job, you know, when I was supervisor. And plus I think they all thought, you know, get me fired, then they might be supervisor. I don't know. But anyway, they told him, oh, you know, that's terrible. You know, you had to buy glasses because of him. So I got on this subject for a reason. Well, anyway. Oh, yeah, might as well go on. So I'm up in, it's later, you know, a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, something like that. And I'm up in dispatch for 2 hours. We rotated every 2 hours. And on the closed circuit cameras, I can see down in the auditorium, it's filled with employees. They're going down there to the thing. And I asked the, you know, security, what's going on down? You know, I don't know, a bunch of people. I said, they're handing out something to every one of them. Go down and get one. Oh, he said, okay. He went down there. A couple other security officers by that time come up at the, you know, dispatch with me up there, you know. Then he shows up with it. And it was a directive, you know, from the hospital saying that all employees, not just for all the hospitals they had taken over, also, all employees have to be willing to work at another facility. If we need you at another facility, you'll be, you know, called or sent over there when you come to this hospital or whatever, or they'll call you at home and tell you need to go to this other hospital. And so I'm there, and I said, something to the effect, I don't understand how this place can have supervisors, and they have these, you know, high-ranking supervisors. I'm not talking about security and nursing, you know, and all that kind of stuff, and other people, and they have these meetings, you know, which go on for maybe for weeks or months, where they draw up something, you know, and then they come up, you know, with these gigantic brains that they have, you know, they come up with something, and this is what they come up with. And it even had the guy, the RN, he was a supervisor RN, a male, and he was up there in a higher echelon. I don't think he ever touched a patient. I mean, to begin with, he had to, but once you get to this layer, you don't see a patient, you don't touch a patient, you come up with policies and plans, and they, you know, go to dinner at the hospital and eat lobster, and, you know, because security would have to secure the area, you know, they drink wine, and I'm not sure they drank wine. Can't remember now, probably did. But I said, well, this is a waste of time, and these people, I don't understand how they can be so stupid. What do you mean, you know? Because I think they were afraid that somebody would, you know, hear what I said or something. And I said, this isn't going to work. And the reason it's not going to work, and then I said, okay, remember I worked out of Research Belton Hospital. If you try to send somebody out to Research Belton Hospital, I said, first of all, that was the first thing I went, first of all, you're going to tell employees that they have someplace they've never worked, maybe never seen, that they're going to be sent out there. And I said, you're going to have a lot of employees, food service employees, housekeeping employees, and other employees who don't even have transportation. They ride a bus to work or something. And I said, buses don't run at night also. I said, they're going to, you know. And then I said, also, you're going to have lab and ICU nurses and things like that. And they're going to say, no, I can't work out there because I haven't been orientated out, you know, out there. And I said, so the hospital will say, well, okay, we'll make sure you're oriented out at the, you know, I even mentioned lab and I mentioned Research Belton Hospital, to these guys. And I said, they'll have to do that. And I said, the hospital will come back and say, yeah, we'll arrange for transportation if it's at night or something. We'll arrange to get you there. I said, maybe security will end up driving them, you know, to their place. And I said, but then you know, the nurses like lab and ICU nurses, things like that. I said, they're going to say no. Sending me out here for 1 day or 2 days or 3 days, that's not orientation. There's more to it, and they're going to go through all of, you know, you got to know, you know, this kind of stuff. And so anyway, the guys are like, well, Health Midwest, that's what they say, and that's what they're going to do. And I said, no, it's not. I said, no, they're going to lose on that, you know. So sure enough, employees raised a stink about it, and then the hospital put out a thing saying, you know, transportation will be made if required, you know, and people will get orientation, you know, they'll get orientation or whatever. And the guy said, you know, then, well, there weren't as many then standing around me, but, you know, see, I said, no, that's not gonna work. And sure enough, a short time after that, the hospital said, put it out to all the employees, no, you're not going to be sent, but everybody hired in now from such and such a date, everybody who's hired in new will have to sign a paper saying that they're willing to go where they're sent. Oh, God. You know, it wasn't that I was smarter than, well, in fact, I wasn't. Hey, remember, if you watch my videos, I went to summer school, high school summer school. I went 4 years in a row. Not only that, I actually went to grade school, the last year of grade school. I didn't know you could get sent to summer school. I didn't know they had summer school. I got sent to summer school, or to Redemptorist High School. And the reason I was sent there was because I couldn't spell. Now, I couldn't spell because I had hearing problems, very severe, since the first grade. So anyway, I go out to the Redemptorist for the summer. You know, and when I finished that, then I'd be going to high school. You know, I went out there, and of course the nun. Let me tell you all here, you know, there weren't very many of us, you know. The reason you can't spell is because you don't read. If you read, you'll be able to spell. And then I was sitting there and thinking, you know, sister, I didn't say anything. You know, sister, I can read better than you can, at whatever the grade level, you know, was or whatever. And the thing we had was you read something, and then they had questions to see if you read it and to see if you could interpret it or, you know, understand it or whatever. And sure enough, I forget what my reading, you know, it was in high school or above. I mean, I had no trouble reading. I was reading government printing office field manuals and all type. From the government printing office, you could order in just about anything. I was reading that. I wasn't reading my, you know, but anyway. So, how did I get on that subject? Oh, yeah. You know, it wasn't that I was smart. These people are so, well, one thing, that hospital, Research Medical Center, that ended up buying all these other hospitals and all that kind of stuff. I should remember his name. Graham, Dr. Graham. He was president, or he was the doctor for Harry Truman, President Harry Truman. He was his doctor. And President Truman, I forget, I think it was Saudi Arabia, the king or whatever, had a heart attack or something, and Truman sent his private doctor, not his private doctor, but, sent Graham over there. Well, Graham ended up then, when he left the military or whatever, he was the head of Research Medical Center. Now, keep in mind, he was a doctor, and, so, but he was there a long time, and I think that's the reason with the hospital, the way everything worked. I mean, even after he was long gone, when he was no longer, in charge of the hospital, everything that he put into, the way he put things into effect, and it was, I think, must have been, the commanders, the captains, the majors, the colonels, and, whatever. When their decision was, when they got together and they made their decision, that's the way, that's the way it was. And then I saw when the 18 years that I worked for Research Medical Center or Health Midwest or whatever you want to call that, I saw that how that worked. Nobody ever got a promotion in any field unless you had approved of everything. If you made waves, if you had questions or whatever after it had been decided, that was, you weren't going to be, and that was one of the problems with the way the hospital, worked. Anyway, I got to end this. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry well, it's only an hour and 11 minutes. You don't need an hour, anyway, do you? Thank you very much.